These pictures were taken by my dad, Edwin Carlson, missionary with the Christian and Missionary Alliance, working among the Chinese and Tibetans on the border between the two races in what is now Gansu and Sichuan provinces. I am Bob Carlson. The person that I will be referring to from time to time as CJ is my younger sister, Carol Jean. When ships left San Francisco, it was the custom for people on board ship to toss crepe paper streamers down to their friends on the pier, and the friends and the passengers would hold the ends of this paper until the movement of the ship broke the tape, the farewell. A U.S. Navy ship of some sort just outside Golden Gate. The sea outside the Golden Gate was notorious for being rough. It was a good test for the passengers to see how seaworthy they were. We're returning to China after a furlough in the States, spring 1936. The city of Shanghai, the old Chinese city. You see lots of pedestrians, bicycles, an occasional streetcar, not very many cars. Just about everything is done by manpower, including, here's a barge going upstream, and you see they're poling the barge to move it up. It's not motorized. Coming downstream, there's another one, and it is going quite a bit faster. Again, it's not motorized, but they do have oars. The waterfront, totally changed now, very, very different. Back to the streets, carts pulled by man, a woman with bound feet walking across the middle of the screen, porters carrying all kinds of stuff. There's a car. Rickshaws, those have all disappeared now. The advertising banners and shop names fluttering above the street. The shops were all open to the street. They had shutters which could be brought across the doorway to close it up at night, but basically it was wide open. This is a plane of the Eurasia Airline, a German line which flew from Germany across Siberia, I believe, and then across China. At the rear, we have my mother, myself, and CJ. we went by train from Shanghai to Xi'an, and then at Xi'an we took a plane flight for 2.5 hours to the city of Lanzhou. The plane coming in here is said to belong to Zhang Xueliang, who just a few months later kidnapped Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek and held him for ransom, trying to force him to fight against the Japanese rather than against the communists. I think this was the first time that any of us had ever flown. The airfield, you can see, is very, very dusty. But flying for 2.5 hours took the place of about a month of travel this way in mule-drawn carts. That's dust that is flying around in the air. These things were slow, they had no springs, desperately uncomfortable. Going up a hill, you had to double team to pull the cart up. These roads are not excavated down into the dirt, as you see here, but that is just the result of hundreds of years of travel and erosion. It's very, very deep and soft soil, and the road, little by little, wears down. This device is called a shanzi, an instrument of torture, some regard it as, carried by 2 mules. And the passengers sit inside it as you swing and sway along the road. Mother rode it only when she absolutely has to. Here we are crossing the bridge in Lebrun, where we lived for about a year after arriving there. The shanzi gets down from the bridge across the little river. Our luggage, and then I come along. I think this is Albert Carlson, I'm not sure. And then CJ, at 4 years old, her animal was still led. Now we're back to the way we usually traveled. Mother at last has a horse, not a shanzi. First a Tibetan guide, then I come along, then CJ, then Mother, and she is leading Dad's horse. This was the normal kind of road in that area. No cars would travel this, no carts of any sort. Here we've got some traders. I don't know what they're carrying. It may be barrels of honey, or it may just be empty kettles, great big copper cooking kettles. Now we've gone still further south. This is the Minshan Range, over 12,000 feet in elevation, and it was a barrier between Chinese and Tibetan populations. We're going up the hill. I think Al Fasmeyer in the lead. I don't know who the other people are. From the top of the pass, you see the rugged mountains. Very few passes over these mountains. And in the winter they would be completely closed by snow. The top of the pass was the divide between the Tao River and the Yellow River and the Yangtze River watersheds. We're now going down into valleys where the waters flowed down past Chongqing into the Yangtze River. Now going down the gorge into the territory of the Tebu tribes, and specifically the small valley of Drakamna. The gorge becomes very, very narrow the further down you go before it opens out into the valley. So narrow that the supports for the road run from one side of the valley to the other, following with the course of the river. Now, Al was riding the horse across that bridge. It was not the custom to ride downhill. The rider walked. Now out in the Tibetan grasslands, this was a shortcut that we took. This was in 1940 on a trip to Ngawa, about 15 days from where we lived. We took a shortcut and we got into swamp and I had a bad time. Tibetan black tent. You can see the plunger of the churn going up and down as the daughter of the tent churns butter in her big churn. Every tent had dogs, not really pets, but watchdogs, guard dogs. And anybody approaching a strange tent had to have some way to beat the dogs off. These men have long poles, and the dogs know they have them, and they steer clear while the men walk past. Now we're traveling with yak. We had with us on this trip, which we made with Bob and Betty Ekval, we had 8 or 10 yak, I think. Here, at the end of the day, it was our job to unsaddle our horses. So here we have CJ unsaddling her mule. I'm unsaddling my horse. CJ is trying to get the mule's leg forward so she can put the hobble on. Okay, that's done. CJ taking the saddle off her mule, taking the bridle off. The mule was named Nellie after her grandmother, and give it a pat on the rump, send it off. Unloading the yak. We carried all of our supplies with us, food, gifts for our hosts, tents, everything that was needed for a 2.5-month trip from home. And yak were the most dependable animals to use for carrying loads like that, although it was a slow mode of transportation, 10 or 15 miles a day. We were in an area called Ngawa, which was an independent kingdom, a remnant of the centuries when Tibet was broken up into a bunch of independent kingdoms. The king was a friend of Bob Ekval's, and he gave him a bear cub, which we loved. Named her Alice. The Ekvals were visiting this area with the hope of establishing a mission station here. Now, anytime we did anything, we attracted a crowd. And there they are watching these funny foreign kids playing with a bear. That is Bob Ekval in the middle, and with him the king of Ngawa and his prime minister discussing the question of land for a mission station. Everywhere that we went, there were crowds. Very few Westerners had ever visited Ngawa. So we were real strangers. Early in the morning, getting ready to move. All our stuff is packed up. It's loaded. Getting ready to start. We usually traveled until the early afternoon and then stopped for the day while the animals grazed. The caravan is getting set to move. The bear is having a little bit of fun with one of the mules. He's playing with the gear on the mule, pulling at the ropes, pulling the mule's head over a little bit closer. I don't know what she had in mind. It probably was not good. Here's a woman gathering the wet manure from the yak, which she will take home, spread out like pancakes, sort of, dry it, and then use it for fuel. That was the standard fuel for that area where there was very, very little wood to be burned. Right? The man is leading the bear. That's Bob Ekval in the center there, dressed in Tibetan clothes as he normally wore when traveling among the Tibetans. We tried to take the bear along on foot, but she couldn't make it. Eventually, she was just put on top of a load carried by the slowest yak in the bunch. Breakfast. Find 3 rocks, set up the kettles on the rocks, light a fire underneath, and since it's a fire of dried manure, it needs a good blast of air, and that's what the 2 fellows on the right are doing with their bellows, working it to keep the fire going, boiling up the tea, which is then mixed with butter and barley flour, mixed up with the hands, as you see, and eaten. It's pretty good stuff. Tsamba. But that was standard diet, day after day after day. Going along through the grasslands now. We had a couple of dogs with us as watchdogs at night. Yak will not travel in a line, in a string. They insist on bunching up. Various members of the party, Bob Ekval on his big white horse. And this is the way we traveled hour after hour, day after day. We didn't meet very many people. We didn't see very many. Here's outside another encampment of nomads. In the background you can see some of the black tents. We've got a couple of pedestrians going by. They have chunks of wood tied to a long rope which they swing around them to keep the dogs off. We met a pilgrim. He is going to Lhasa, clear across country. Prostrating his way, he's wearing leather gloves, wooden gloves on his hands, a big leather apron, prostrates, reaches out as far as he can, gets up and walks to where his hands reached, then goes down again. He travels to Lhasa. We're now back among the Chinese, and Dad took a number of pictures showing construction methods. These fellows are getting ready to make some boards, some planks. First was to snap an inked line the length of the log, then set the log up, then one man up above, the other man at the bottom, and after you have cut the length of the log by sheer manpower, no power tools here, you have a board, a plank. And you do that over and over and over again until you have the boards that you need. Making bricks. Moist earth tossed into a frame, tamped down by the feet, then a rock with a handle on it used to tamp it down firmly. The excess is then brushed off, the frame opened up, the brick picked up, and set with the others where it will sit in the sun until dry. They could also be baked in an oven, which would produce more long-lasting bricks. But many, many constructions were done this way, just with the pounded earth. The mortar is just mud, maybe a little bit of straw mixed in, but this is basically a wall of sun-dried brick with mud as mortar. Out on the street, we have portable food stalls. This guy is selling noodles, I think. Now in Labrang, which was one of the largest Tibetan lamaseries in that part of the country. These are prayer wheels. Each one of these cylinders is packed with the formula Om Mani Padme Hum, written thousands of times. And as you spin the cylinder, you get credit for the repetition of the prayers. These pictures were taken at New Year's time. The hats that these women are wearing are special. They're not everyday wear. You go around the temple in a clockwise direction, never counterclockwise, although there are some sects which do go counterclockwise, but they are not regarded as orthodox. Tibetan New Year's was in late December, January, early February. It was a calendar based upon the moon, and so New Year varied from year to year. Tibetans came from miles around to the lamasery to take part in the festivities, to walk around the monastery, twirling the prayer wheels. And from their dress, we can tell that it's a festive occasion, not every day. What is often called the devil dance. The Tibetan name for it is roughly the equivalent of a wishing prayer festival. It's partly spectacle, partly ritual, something done for the pleasure of the gods, but also gives benefit to all of those who watch. The dancers are monks. You see the orchestra there in the middle with the drums and cymbals. The dancers have very colorful costumes and masks of animals, mythological creatures, religious figures. Some of them are comic figures. But the crowds assemble for this thing, which goes on for hours. See, the lead dancer is in the center with the broad-brimmed hat, and the orchestra banging away with a rhythm of ba-ba-ba-ba-bum, bum, ba-ba-ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-ba-ba-bum, bum, ba-ba-ba-ba-bum. All of the stuff has symbolism. The masks, the costumes. You see the horned animal there. But this is the highlight of the New Year celebration. It does away with the sins and disasters of the previous year. They're pushed into the background, and you start the new year with a clean slate, in effect. The dance brings protection for the people. One of the features here is an explosion which is coming along. A package of gunpowder is tossed into a pot of boiling oil with a great explosion. All of the fancy hats of the crowd. I think the dance is now over. There we go. The fiery explosion. After the dance, the dancers and the orchestra march away. In the background, you see the long horns that they're blowing, sort of like Swiss alpine horns. The drums in the background. Now the dancers in their ornate costumes. Occasionally you see the cymbal players clanging their cymbals. Here we have dignitaries. The chief lama, there, the guy who just lost his hat, this man, the chief lama of the Labrang monastery, regarded by the people as a savior. Women prostrate their way around the monastery, which could take a mile or two. But you see them marking their progress in the dust, getting up, moving forward, down again. Sometimes they're a little bit slow to get up. They're getting tired. But they have to make the full circuit or it doesn't count. All of this is to build up merit toward the next reincarnation. The man walking across the screen is either Chinese or Muslim. This man is Tibetan, the different costume. A man and a woman, a couple of monks. Is this a horse with a rumble seat? You notice the men have the right sleeve hanging free, the right arm out in the open. That was the custom, except when it was extremely cold. This monastery still exists, although it was 90% destroyed during the Cultural Revolution, which started in about 1967. It's being rebuilt little by little. The umbrella indicates that a lama is coming. His sedan chair will be appearing shortly. No hurry. Everybody moves along slowly. Here comes his sedan chair. The Lama inside, and the people are going along with him somewhere. Another double umbrella. Up onto the horse, off they go. This is a ceremony which is done once a year in only a few places in Tibet. I have seen it only in Labrang. This man is what is sometimes referred to as a scapegoat. He carries off the sins and misfortunes of the people. It used to be that people would throw stones at him or even shoot at him. But after a couple of these guys were killed, they built an effigy, a framework, which was tossed into the river after he had crossed the bridge. So he goes off into the hills, and the people throw rocks or even shoot at that wooden structure that is floating down the river. There you are, rocks. It looks as if it has taken a few good hits. But he carries off the misfortunes of the year. And then the procedure is done again the following year. He's supposed to stay away all year, but my understanding is that after a few days he sneaks back. Out in Ngawa, we met this fellow who is a magician or sorcerer, just like these two. They are not monks. They do not live in the monastery, but their specialty is pronouncing charms and spells, either for good or for evil. Dad got these guys to give a demonstration of their arts. A cymbal and the drum, and the things on their heads are not hats, that's their hair, all of it. They get some refreshments as they go along, some tea, some deep-fried bread dough, possibly some zamba. One of these guys is going to be undoing his hair shortly, so you can see what it's like. Never cut and never washed either. The guy second from the right is a layman. I think maybe the two of them are making cracks about hair. Now you see, the sorcerer has undone his. The other guy, well, most of his is gone. I suspect that this is a tale of woe that he is telling. What a difficult life he is leading, how poor he is, and so on. A little more tea. That's all right with me. Okay. Demonstration over. Time to go. Mm-hmm. This is in the China Inland Mission Hospital in the capital city of the province, in Lanzhou. And these are patients from the leprosarium. The fellow on the extreme right is a Tibetan from the Tebu Valley. They are Christians and they are about to be baptized. This is Stan Harrison, who worked among the Tibetans for quite a number of years, speaking to them before the baptismal service, which was held in the Yellow River, which is at the bottom of the hill where the hospital is. And just across the river is the city wall of Lanzhou. You can see how muddy the water is. It was not called the Yellow River for nothing. Back now in Tibetan country. It's spring in the Drakamna Valley, and they are plowing. The people that we saw earlier with the black tents are nomads, moving constantly from one place to another. These people live in villages and they plant crops. The nomads do not. But the nomads are looked upon as being the top of the heap. Nomadic life is regarded by everybody as being the real way to live, not miserable farmers. There we are, a team of yak being guided by one man in front, pulling a plow which is being guided by the man at the back. A woman breaking up the clods of earth after the plow has gone through. A man sowing the seed. You notice he throws it. This is different from the way Chinese would do it. They scatter theirs sort of sidearm, you might say, rather than overhand. Look at the slopes on which they're planting. Here they're using a horse.